there's something that we've learned, we should meditate on it, try to apply it, really use it. So the speedy reading of the Word of God is actually not in harmony with what He wants. So it is with really all learning. Unfortunately, we have such a short time. Ideally, you would come to my house for a week and we would do it. That's what ideal would be, right? Because then I would use a lot less words. And when we're done, instead of saying, "What did he say?" you would know exactly what you did. So that would be a much better way to go. And we do that. We invite people over. We just finished one on Friday. We had about 25 people come to our house. Do that. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we are so thankful that you are able to do for us everything that we cannot do for ourselves. But even more than the knowledge that you're able, we're so thankful you're willing. That you're willing to do for us the things that we can't do for ourselves. And so we know that our need is great, and so we ask you to fill our need now. Give us your spirit of wisdom and understanding. Give us hearts to desire your ways. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, what did we learn yesterday? Anyone? Or what did you learn yesterday? Maybe we all learned different things. And part of that is because God's the teacher. So He can speak to you one way, and He can speak to someone else another way. When you're looking at the same thing, we both all go and look at a fig tree, and if I say take 10 minutes and see what the fig tree is teaching you, some person might say, talk about the fruit. Some person might talk about the leaves. Some person might talk about the bird that landed in the fig tree. So God teaches us where we're at. I'm going to try to pull something up while I'm doing this. So, go ahead and share with me what you learned, if anything.
I learned everything in the nature serve to God. In everything in the nature obey to God.
Yes! I'm so happy you learned that. That's it. Yes. That everything in nature actually obeys God. It says that God uses nature. They're His servants and His teachers. So God is not constrained by His servants. His servants do what He says. Does that make sense? That means even though gravity says pull the water down, He can stand it up on its end because they're His servant. He can say stand up, and they stand up. Remember they said, who is this man that even the wind and the waves obey Him? Okay, wonderful. I'm so glad you learned that lesson. What else did you learn?
I learned about thankfulness and grace.
Amen.
That was a high point for me because I believe that even in your planting stuff, it comes with a lot of grace. In planting stuff, especially when you fail.
Yes.
Opportunity to go back, look at it, and someone said it's not like a batch of cookies. If you mess up the first batch, you can go right back at it, get more ingredients, and then 15, 20 minutes, you got a new batch of cookies. But when you're working out in the garden, and you're waiting for something to produce and to happen one way, and it happens the next, you really got to look at that situation. So you have to look at yourself, right, and then apply it to Jesus and look at Him and recognize that His grace is sufficient.
Amen.
So that's one of the things I've learned is grace and thankfulness. Yeah.
Anything else? I met your husband. I really like your husband. He's so friendly. It's so easy to be your husband's friend.
Well, something that I need to remind myself. You said something about the attitude when you make the wrong thing, when you start to do your work in the planting and so on, that you can say, oh, like, oh, I'm stupid, oh, this mistake, or that attitude, I have a lot to learn. So
Yeah.
you said, okay, this is help. It's a lot of help if you take that one.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot to learn. So,
That's right.
and united with that, the pyramid about the trees was a lot of things was good for me. I shared with my friend, my prayer partner this morning. I was very some experience. And also when it said, if you labor cheerfully in the garden,
Angels will labor with you. That's right.
So I just come to my imagine that setting.
Amen. And so sometimes when I'm out there by myself, and of course Satan wants to tempt me that I'm alone, I remember that. Is this mine? I'm going to check to see if this is mine. Yeah, I think so. Okay, I'm going to show you a few things today, just so that you know they're there. I'm sorry for this. I did this in a different version. I am so thankful you learned those things. That encourages me for today. So, I went to a class by a well-known Adventist farmer, and he taught us all kinds of things. Some, just like what you learned, were wonderful nuggets that I still apply today. But there were other things that I learned that I don't use. And I'm going to tell you what I don't use and why. You're allowed to use it. I'm just going to tell you why I don't. Okay? You're allowed. I'm not trying to tell you you can or cannot do anything. I'm not really your teacher. Nature's your teacher, and God is your teacher. I went to a class, and they went over soil chemistry, And so I had there were these different types of numbers. I don't know if you can see these. I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. Zoom in. So, children, have you ever heard of a cation? What if I said the word cation, what would it look like? Yeah, a cat. See, children think of things they can see, fuzzy things that they're familiar with. Agriculture is the A, B's, and C's of education, but when we went, our training was on things like cations. Now, cations are actually invisible to the human eye without microscopes and things. In fact, I went to one class where the man said, you cannot be a serious gardener or farmer without a microscope that has at least 5,000 times zoom or something like that. Which the cheapest microscope that had that kind of zoom was near 1,000 used. But he was trained at the Oregon State University, which is a very highly touted agricultural school. And that's the type of training that they gave him. I don't think there's anything wrong with a microscope. You can look through them. God made even those small things. But when I was a child in science class, we had this picture in my science book. It was a circle with a dot in it. And it was called the simple cell. Do you remember that? Maybe some of you are old enough to remember that. And now, when you study the cell, it's no longer a circle with a dot in it. There's all these other little things happening in there. And I'm sure if we could get a microscope close enough, each of those little things have a bunch of little things happening inside of them. And the reason I'm sure of that is because the Bible says you cannot find out God. God cannot be measured. right? He cannot be measured. You will not get to the point where you can measure him. So God cannot be measured by chemistry. And do we have a whiteboard that I could use today? I want to show you something about chemistry that's really interesting. And actually, this should hit close to home because I got this from Agatha Thrash, what I'm going to share with you. I maybe present it a little differently than she did, but not much. I mean, it was like really awesome to me. So sorry, kids, there's going to be a little chemistry. Okay, you don't, that's okay. I might be able to find it on a PowerPoint, but when we have a break, I'll spend that time looking it up. It's just not as fun as when I get to draw, especially for children. So, well, we're small, so even just this big would be great. Or a flip chart or paper or anything like that. Or if we had a really nice dusty area, I could draw it in the dust. Jesus did that, right? He didn't have a whiteboard, and he was the greatest teacher the world ever knew. Okay, so I went to this class, and this man began teaching us about calcium and parts per million, and magnesium and potassium and sodium and other bases and hydrogen and boron and iron and manganese and copper and zinc and aluminum and soluble salts and chlorides and cobalt and sulfur. And by the end, my children were... But you know what? I used to have a job before being a farmer. I was in the corporate world, and my title was Manager of Business Intelligence for Complex Care. And I liked business intelligence for complex care. So this was like speaking right to me. I was like, ooh, this is my kind of thing. We did reporting and data and analytics and all these things, and that was just my life, and I was good at it. So I actually created this spreadsheet that you see here. It's really small. And let me go back. The tool. The reason I created it is because in the middle of the class, the teacher was actually giving us all these calculations. And let me see if I can click on one of these calculations. I need to download this. This is why it's not showing up right. It's still in Google instead of, let me download it if I can. Okay, there we go. I'm downloading it 3 times. That shows my impatience, because when I worked if I clicked it and it didn't happen, it was like, the computer taught me impatience, gardening teaches me patience. It's just how it works. So I created this spreadsheet in the class. The farmer was giving us all these calculations that he had written down, that he had learned from somewhere else. Now, he used those calculations and understood them to a little degree, but not enough to have created them himself. So really he was being a what? The Spirit Prophecy says that, yes, Spirit Prophecy says that God is not trying to create people who are just reflectors of other men's thoughts. But that's what he had to offer us, something that he didn't do or really even understand to the depth. He understood how to operate within their thoughts, but he was simply just a reflector. He didn't understand technology or things, so he was teaching us, and he taught us for a couple days on this. And I was good at technology, so I actually created this spreadsheet while I was in the class. It has pie charts, and it has all the built-in calculations. Let me show you one of the calculations here. It's going slowly, freezing. I wonder, I have it locked. So never mind. I locked it so that people couldn't modify the calculations and accidentally miss things up. So this is a soil mineral. Yeah. No, this is fine, I think. As long as Brother Andre is fine with it. Okay. So everything that's gray is locked, so I can't click on it and show you the calculations, but the calculations are behind there. I locked them so that if I share it, someone can't mess it up. And by the end of the class, everyone was confused about gardening. The class was supposed to teach us how to garden. People coming in eager, ooh, I'm going to grow tomatoes, peppers, and oh, I'm going to grow strawberries. I can just imagine the pumpkins I grow. I want to grow, I saw these tomatoes, they're purple. I want to grow purple tomatoes. I've never eaten a purple tomato, right? I want to grow, like all kinds of things. But by the end of the class, they're thinking, boron, magnesium, the calculations, they're just so confused. Even smart people. Like there was a man there, he was a civil engineer. That means he designed, like he has to do calculations for like water, the soil percolation and slope and load and all the material things and things I don't know because I haven't been trained, but he was a very intelligent man working for a very large company doing all kinds of civil engineering. He would build if you ever see like these restaurants on the outposts, like you're going to go into like a mall or something and these restaurants are like on these cliffs and they have like stone wall, you go up and then you go into the parking lots and stuff. He would basically design all that so that it could support the parking lots and the drainage and all, he was very smart, but this class on agriculture confused him. It didn't confuse me. I was just accepting the calculations as they were told to me, but I was able to put them in the spreadsheet and build the spreadsheet in the class. And the idea was, I thought that I was going to make it very easy for people because that was my job, was always to take very complex things and make them simple. That was my job. I would take millions and millions of healthcare records and make a simple report. So if I were still in that business, I would be the one reporting to you all the COVID numbers, So I was good at it. This is what I did. I put all this out, and my idea was that all you had to do is put in the size of your garden and then enter. And this is exactly like your soil sample results. They come in the same order. It actually looks exactly like the sheet that comes from your soil sample. All you have to do is plug in the numbers that are on that paper. And then it will tell you how much, in the second column over here, you plug in these numbers from your soil. It says based on test. And then here it will tell you the actual mineral needed. And it tells you exactly what you need. And then over here, you get to choose the actual additive. So we'll do that now. So let's say over here, the first one is calcium. And we need like 3,884 pounds per acre based on the test. And so that's like 16.2 actual mineral needed. So then we can come over here and we can drop down, and I know it's small, but bear with me, I'll kind of explain it to you. There's all these different places where we can get calcium. The first one says organic lime, beet lime, organic bone meal, organic, and so these are all organic. And then past the organics, we can scroll down more. There could be like organic gypsum, calcium sulfate, hydrated lime, all these things. Beyond that, there were like conventional things. So it'd say org or conventional. And then each one of those are a different percentage calcium. So in other words, like if I need 3,000 pounds of calcium and I get 3,000 pounds of lime, but lime is 50% calcium, then I really need 6,000 pounds of lime. So my spreadsheet calculates based on the percentage of calcium in each of those things exactly how much of the thing that you can get and are going to put on your soil what you need. Does that make sense? So it's going to really make it easy. Are you starting to feel a little bit more confused already? And then it's like, okay, the percent in the additive was 23% here, right? So if I choose a different one, it's 35% calcium. And if I choose a different one. But what this doesn't show me is how much of each of those things cost, where to buy it, is it available? And then, then it converts based on the percentage of the additive, how much you actually need of that additive. There's one final column over here, and it says amount from other additives. Because let's say you're trying to get magnesium and you use a product that has 5% calcium. Then you've got to factor that into the amount of calcium there. And it gets very, 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 very complicated. Okay? And we're practicing very little observation. We haven't looked at the soil. We haven't touched the soil. We're not outside. And we're basing all of our hopes of fertility on this, and that the lab didn't mess up our test. Okay. So, but I'm just trying to give you some history. So this is what I did. I built it. Everyone in the class became my immediate best friend. Because at the end of the class, they were thoroughly and completely discouraged and confused. And I could give them this tool. I could email it to them. And all they had to do is plug in the numbers. And that's what they wanted to do. Just let me plug in the numbers. And so then later I went to a different ministry, and that ministry said, okay, we want the farm to fully support the whole ministry financially. And they had like a 1-acre garden. So I was like, how am I going to financially support an entire institution on a 1-acre garden? So, we're going to have to do something a little unconventional. I had this that I had previously built, so I said to them, well, we don't really have a good farmland. Even that 1 acre wasn't good farmland. In fact, I'll tell you, it had been just rototilled for 25 years, which is like stirring up 4 to 6 inches deep. So one time I went in with a subsoiler trying to break up the deep soil, and the subsoiler broke, and I was borrowing it from a friend. So I spent the entire day heating the metal and rebending it and welding and trying to get his subsoiler back into shape. We finally got it back into shape, and we put it back on the tractor and we tried again. And it broke on the first pass again. And I was like, I cannot spend another day repairing this over and over. So I'm going to repair it again, but I need to figure out what's happening. So I took a long metal rock bar. It's like 35 pounds and kind of sharp. And I started going through the field. Like, there's got to be something under there. Where is it hard? And it went, tink. I was like, there's a rock. So I dug down about 5 or 6 inches, and I saw a rock. And I was like, oh, there's a rock there. Okay, let's get this out. So the way I would get out rocks is I would take a pickaxe or a pickmatic. It has a pick on the end and a handle like an axe. Now, if you're going to get a rock out, you don't hit the rock. It'll bounce, it'll spark, it'll hurt your hands. You hit on the side of the rock and then pry it out. Like just beside it. Let it go down into the soil and then pry the rock out. So I see that area and I go, tink! There's still rock, so I move it. Oh, the rock's bigger than I thought. Tink! We uncovered, and I'm not exaggerating, a 6-foot wide boulder that was 5 inches below the surface of a garden that had been farmed for 25 years. And we didn't have a machine big enough to pull a 6-foot boulder out. So we had a lot of young boys, about 14, 15 years old, that wanted to be strong. They wanted to become men. So we took the pickaxes and we went down there and we chipped away at the rock. And we took turns. So we had about 6 of us. And we would literally take turns because it's tiring work. So I would time them. You have 30 seconds. One would jump in and tink, 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 and maybe a little chip would come off. And he would be tired after 30 seconds. So he would get out. The next one would jump in. Tink! It took us 2 days. And we got the rock out. Now, when the Bible says, take the stony heart out of my flesh, sometimes it's a big ordeal. And it was for us then. Now, the funny thing, the reason I tell you that is because when I said, okay, we don't have good farmland, I used that to tell you we didn't have good farmland, even that 1 acre. So I told them, you know what, this is a very confusing process. People get confused all along the way. And I have a tool that eliminates confusion. And if we can go one step further, because even with this tool, you could plug in your results and it tells you what to get. But now you don't even know, on that list of all those calcium sources, you don't know which one's better, how much it costs, where to get it. What if we do that too? What if we become like a market, like an Amazon.com, where you plug in your soil sample, and then we tell you, based on your zip code and our supplier partners, what to actually buy. And because we're connected, all you have to do is add it to your cart, buy it, and it's shipped to your door. So it would just we're going to be rich. And they love the idea, of course. And so all we needed to do is and then, of course, I was in business intelligence, which we also did business process streaming and automation. So what we would do, I was saying, we're going to partner with a lab. So we're going to have electronic data interface, which means they send their sample to the lab. The lab automatically makes that electronically available to our system. It does the calculations, it recommends, and it notifies the customer their cart is waiting, how much it's going to be, and all they have to do is buy it. Then we can get partner consultants to apply the minerals, because if you apply it in the wrong way, you can mess it up too. For instance, sometimes it says put 1 pound of something on an acre. Well, how are you going to evenly distribute 1 pound of something on an acre? Eek. So it takes skill even to apply this stuff. Some of the things are so dangerous you can't touch it or breathe it. Does this sound like a system that's including the children? No, it doesn't to me. It excludes them. It's so dangerous that an untrained person shouldn't even do this, let alone children. So this was the idea. I went to another 3 or 4 day, I think it was 3 day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A 3-day full class on soil science by someone that I was told was the best agriculture mind we had in Adventism. That's what someone told me. He's like, this guy is the best mind we have in Adventist agriculture. And he was teaching a 3-day class on soil science, this. So I went to that class and I took a programmer for the institution. Because what we were going to do is just verify that my process works, that it matches up with this other trainer, that everything would be good. And the programmer would start to work on automating the system to actually get it to work. Now, in that class, they taught us that the ideal soil is 68% calcium, 12% magnesium, and on down the line, each of these things have an exact percentage that the soil needs to be. That kind of threw up a little red flag in my mind, because Ellen White says in the Spirit of Prophecy that every plant needs a different soil. So I was like, but they're saying there's one ideal soil. So that's not matching up. But I was already down this road far enough. And by the way, everyone in that class, they were all farmers, because this was actually a farmers-only class. They were all farmers. And I became all their best friend, because at breaks, I showed them this. And they were like, oh, can I please have that? Because I'm confused. And it really did bother me after the first class, and then again after the second class. The first class was beginners. It was for families. So I understood that they might be confused. But this was like a farmers only class, people who were dedicating their lives to this. And I saw just as much confusion in the farmers only class as what I saw in the beginners class. And so I was like, why is everyone confused? If this is the way, why are they leaving more confused than when they started and more discouraged? And again, I was their best friend because I could email this to them. So then, I had that one thing where it was like there's one ideal soil. And so I raised my hand and asked a question in the class. And it was just an innocent question at that point, like I was just trying to understand. I said, excuse me, brother, can you tell me like how they decided or that 68% calcium was right? Like why not 69? Why not 65? Like who chose 68% calcium is perfect? You know what he said? He said, well, actually, it's based on the chemical composition of humus. You remember we talked just a little bit yesterday about humus? I'll talk about it again. And he had previously taught us about humus in the class. So when he taught us about humus, he said humus is any organic material properly decomposed down to a stable state. That means it's no longer decomposing. It's stable. It's released all the chemicals that it needs to. It's exchanged with the things around it to form stability. So you don't have any of those like loose electrons looking to exchange anymore. It's now stable. And no matter what organic material you start with, as long as it's properly decomposed, you're going to end up with 68% calcium, 12% magnesium, and on and on and on. And so right away in my mind, I'm thinking, then why spend all this money? Because these things are very expensive. To mimic something that anyone, and when he explained this, he said you could start with pine needles, you could start with branches of wood, leaves, grass clippings, anything, food scraps from the kitchen. Any organic material is seeking chemical stability, and that chemical stability looks like 68% calcium. So I was thinking like, That's just fully composted compost. So some people use compost, not yet fully stable, but if it's fully composted down, then that's compost, that's humus. And so at that point in my mind, I'm like, oh no. Because one thing is, I grew up poor. I grew up poor, like so poor that we had an institution like this, Adventist institution close by, and they had like a cafeteria. And when the milks and the like little yogurts and things like that would pass their expiration, they weren't allowed to serve them. People would sneak them out. They were supposed to throw them away. They would sneak them out, put them in their car, bring them to the back door of our house and feed us. Okay, so I was poor. So I sympathize with poverty and poorness. And Ellen White says agriculture is the solution to the unemployed masses. Well, how's an unemployed person supposed to afford all this stuff? So immediately I thought, I'm creating a system that although we're going to be rich, if the poor people follow it, they're wasting their money. And so I thought, but maybe there's something I'm missing. So let me just sit in the class, be quiet. I'm not going to interrupt the class. I'm not going to put the instructor on the spot. You know, because I knew if I asked that question right then, that it would like blow up his class. I didn't want to do that to him. Plus, there might be something I'm missing. So I just sat there, and we still went about the process for the next day and a half. By the way, I went to Heartland one time, not for education, but actually for education, but for a short period, not for like joining their college. You know Heartland College, right up there in Virginia? And at the time, they were in real difficult financial situation, and they needed money. They have beautiful land. They have like 750 acres. And they have a lot of land that even used to be farmed. And they have an amazing market because they're not far out of Washington, D.C., where people will pay for organic, locally grown produce. And processed things coming out of, like let's say you had strawberries. You could sell probably as much organic strawberries as you could sell, but you could still preserve and you could sell those. I mean, you could sell tomatoes and then tomato sauce. I mean, you could sell all kinds of things. Agriculture is the solution for the unemployed masses. One person called me asking me to go to Heartland. They said that they were going to raise money to put in 20,000 fruit trees and they wanted me to manage it. To help Heartland. They said what we see is, they said, Heartland is like a man standing in front of his mansion begging for money. Because they have a mansion. They have this beautiful setup. So, when I was there, I noticed that they had farmland that was farmed before, but wasn't being farmed then. So I asked them, why aren't you farming that land? And it could have been we don't have enough help, things like that. Could have been, but that's not their answer. Their answer was, we're waiting until we have the money for all the amendments. Because we're told that it's not worth doing unless we do this first. And I thought, that's a slavery. That's oppression. That's oppressing the poor. I mean, not them. They were the poor in that situation, right? So they're not doing oppression, but the idea that you need this before you can, and by the way, if you actually rightly mineralize an acre over time, the way that they're saying, you're going to pay more for the minerals than you did for the acre. And Ellen White says, if you have land, you have both the means and incentive for a life of self-support. So that statement I take as a principle to mean, if I have land, then somewhere on that land, I have the means for a life of self-support. I don't need all these things from all over. So this became to me like, if they say Christ is in the wilderness, don't go see. For me, that's the way it is. I don't condemn anyone that uses this, but to me, this would be like taking someone who's sitting on the couch all day, every day, watching TV, having negative thoughts, eating microwaved lamb chops and pork chops, and never drinking water, just drinking sodas. And then they come for health, and all you do is put them on a bunch of supplements instead of maybe correcting some behavioral things. Now, they may need some supplements at some point, but wouldn't you want to fix their habits? Fix the cause? So that's the other thing that bothered me, is they said, before you do anything, take the test. But as you start to change that soil by mixing it, turning it, tilling it, plowing it, whatever you're doing, you're actually changing the structure, the chemical composition. The other thing that bothered me is standard soil samples go 6 inches deep. Ellen White says in Avondale, she says, back in America, 8 inches deep of preparation is considered neglect. We need to go deeper. So what do we care what the 6 inches above is if we haven't even touched deeper? So if you're going to do soil sampling, here's my recommendation. Again, I'm not telling you not to do this, just like I wouldn't tell you never to do a blood test. But for the general person, you can attain good health without a blood test. Am I right? You can. There are certain cases where you're doing everything you can, habits have been corrected, all these things, and there's still issues, and you might want to see a blood test. That's the way I look at this. If you've corrected all the habits that you know in the Bible, the Spirit of Prophecy for your garden, and there's still problems, you may want to do this. But imagine trying to fix that man's health with only supplements. How many things are you going to have to get from the health food store to try to fix him if he's still sitting on the couch? if he's still eating the microwave dishes, if he's still drinking sodas, how much are you going to spend trying to correct that with supplements? Right? So that's the way I see this model, and yet this is the most commonly modeled taught even in Adventist circles. I don't see it that way. I don't see this in harmony with the spirit of prophecy. So, at the end of the event, it was Sabbath night. He was the keynote speaker. He gave a spiritual talk, and then he had time afterwards. So I went up to him by myself, one-to-one, and I said, brother, I have a question for you, and I just want to make sure that my understanding is correct. I said, in the class, you said that the soil model, the ideal soil, is based on humus. He said, yes. I said, okay. And you said that humus was any organic material broken down to its stable state. He said, yes. I said, well, that's what I thought from your class. So then my question is, why don't we just grow in humus? And I was actually literally expecting him to go, oh, like, ignorant little son, I have some things to teach you. But he didn't do that. Here's what he did. He went, They call that an organic soil. And then he said, there is a man, have you heard of so-and-so? And I can't remember his name today. And I hadn't really heard of him. I said, no, I haven't heard of him. He said, he's a man that actually sets out year after year to try to set world records for the size of the produce he grows. And he says, he grows in Alaskan humus. Up in Alaska, where during the summer hours, it's almost like light 24 hours a day, so things just grow like nonstop. They don't stop for night. But he grows in humus. He says, do you know what he fertilizes with? I said, I have no idea. He said, a tea made from the humus. And so then it was like finished in my mind. I was like, then I cannot in good conscience spend my energies trying to convince people that they need to buy all these things. So I closed this application that I was building. I closed my dreams of richness and took a more basic approach to agriculture, something that the children could do, something that the poor could do, something that anyone who had faith and cheerfulness and courage and perseverance to do it could get a harvest. And that's what Ellen White says. She says there are treasures held in the depths of the earth for those who have courage and perseverance to seek them. It doesn't say for those who have soil samples and lots of money. Yes, and tons of amendments. So I wanted to give you that so that way I'm not just like ignorantly against something. I was strongly for that system. I was building our future on it. I built it at that thing. So I'm sort of like intelligently opposed to it. Okay? From principle. But, like I said, if you've done everything you can and you can't figure it out, go get a celibate. I'm not against that. And Satan always presents a real problem and the wrong solution. To Eve, you'll be like God. Well, she needed to become more and more like God every day. That's a real problem, but the wrong solution. Eat the fruit, right? Jesus came to reveal God. And he says, if you're the Son of God, he needed people to know that he was the Son of God. But then Satan presented the wrong solution. So I believe that this is not completely off. Like, you might be short in nitrogen. But the solution may not be to figure that out from a piece of paper. Or to go out and buy some like chemical compound to meet the need. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll give you something else, and then we'll take a break. And then we'll go outside a little bit. And then we'll come back in and we'll use this. And I'll show you the thing with Agatha Thrash. This will be chemistry, but also like a little bit of plant science. And I think the children might be able to understand too. So, the University of Georgia, which I am not against science, by the way. It's just like I told you yesterday. I use the Bible and the spirit of prophecy to verify if science is good. If science does not agree with the Bible, I throw the science in the trash can. I don't throw the Bible in the trash can. I know of Adventists, friends of mine, who when science cannot reveal what's in the Bible, they throw the Bible in the trash can. I don't do that. I do the other way. Okay? So I don't have a problem with science. If science is in harmony with the principles of the Bible, then it could be true science. Ellen White says, all true science has its foundation in the Bible. So you should be able to trace it back. If you can't trace it back, be cautious. Be cautious, because all true science has its foundation in the Bible. Okay, that's how I go about things. University of Georgia has, I was looking at planting grain this winter on almost all of my land. So it was a big deal. And I was doing some research on where to buy grain. So sometimes, and with those decisions, I'll go to the university, because sometimes they have like local suppliers, especially when you're buying things in huge bulk. And the University of Georgia was one close by Alabama, and it talked about grain farming in southern Georgia. And it said that if you're going to plant rye, as an example, then you need something like 2,000 pounds of nitrogen per acre. And then, you can buy that in various forms and apply it. Well, I'm going to do like 16 acres, and so that means I need 16 times 2,000. I need 32,000 pounds of something. So there's going to be a huge truck that delivers to my door, right? If I'm going to buy that. I mean, it's got to be a huge truck. A normal pickup truck is rated for half of a ton. That's 1,000 pounds. So it would take 32 pickup trucks to deliver the amount of nitrogen that I need just to plant grain on my field. And that's just for nitrogen, not calcium or anything else, right? But then they said, but if your previous crop was soybeans, you don't need the 2,000 pounds per acre, you need like 800 pounds per acre. And if your previous crop was something else, it reduced it or increased it based on what your previous crop was. And then it got down to, if your previous crop was peanuts, you need 0 pounds per acre. Even the University of Georgia. George Washington Carver. But guess who invented peanut butter? No, that's what everyone believes. He invented, it was Dr. John Harvey Kellogg who invented peanut butter. He actually regretted it later because he said roasted peanut butter is not actually a healthful food. And then he revealed a different way to cook the peanut butter, which he said, I hope our brethren in the South take this up. So you can look that up. It's on the Ellen White app. And then if you Google who invented peanut butter, it will say George Washington Carver. But then in maybe I can try to do that. Who invented peanut butter? It'll probably say, okay, this guy. Who was the real inventor of peanut butter? While George Washington Carver didn't invent peanut butter, his work, along with that of peanut butter inventors Edson, Kellogg, and Straub, helped establish peanut butter as a nutritious, stable ingredient found in 94% of American households. I don't know why they're trying to get around it, because they'll actually tell you flat out it is It is Dr. Kellogg, and it used to say that, so they removed it. It used to say, well, he didn't, John Harvey Kellogg did. And here's a picture of John Harvey Kellogg right here. So I'll put peanut butter. Okay, who invented peanut butter? Here it is. And this is from the National Peanut Board. In 1895, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, the creator of Kellogg's cereal, patented a process for creating peanut butter from raw peanuts. He marketed it as a nutritious da-da-da-da. So maybe roasted is not as bad as I thought, but I was thinking that he was saying roasting can scorch the oils and make it unhealthful. So he has this like long broiling or boiling process in a crock in the oven, and it actually turns out really nice. We've done it. It's really good. So anyway, if I can grow peanuts before my rye, I don't need to put any amendments. Isn't that awesome? Now the question is, what if you're in a place where you can't grow peanuts? There's got to be something. There's something. There's something close. God has a way. Now, Ellen White was writing to a man, and this is the last point I'm going to make, and then we're going to take a break. Ellen White was writing to a man while she was in Australia, and he thought he knew how to restore the soil. I haven't been able to find his original letter to her with what he was recommending, okay? But I want to do that at some point. But either way, she was responding to him, and she said, brother, God knows better than you how to restore the soil. She said, if you will search the Old Testament scriptures, you will find that after several years of receiving a harvest, you should let the land rest. And your crops should be rotated. And so, that's all she offered for restoring the soil, but saying God knows better than you. So the two things that I have clearly on the topic of soil restoration is rest and rotate. So those are the two things that I can say, okay, I have a foundation for. Let me explore those further. Let me gain skill and knowledge in those areas in restoring the soil. And so I'll share with you as we go outside after we take a break some of the things that I think resting the soil does. Now certainly I can't find out God, so it might just also receive his blessing. And that's actually what the Bible says. But there might be some even scientific things we can observe to know what it's doing, or at least some of what it's doing. Obviously, if it receives the blessing from his mouth, it's way better than any scientific thing we can see. Okay, let's pray just to end. Then we'll take how much time break do you need? 10, 15 minutes? 10 minutes? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll meet outside under this tree, and I'm actually going to take you into the garden from there, but that's where we'll meet in 10 minutes. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, it is actually very encouraging to me that you redirected my steps. You say it is not for man to direct his steps. And so I look to you to be a lamp unto my feet, a light unto my path. And it is so encouraging that the path that you've led me in is available for children, for the poor, and even for the weak. And so I just pray that we'll make plain paths for our feet, lest the lame be turned out of the way. So please help us. Please be our teacher again. Please be our guide. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.